The beekeeper on the brink of bankruptcy travels through a magical world and gains the ability to control the bee colony, using magical factors to cultivate diverse mutated bee species. Efficient bee pickers, powerful combat bees, and brand new bee species with other magical abilities explore different worlds and bring back various honey sources for flower cultivation, brewing magical honey with magical effects, and selling it to various parts of the two worlds. While becoming a famous honey king and top beekeeper in the original world, the magical world also spread his name. Bee Whisperer in the Black Forest. The latest version of the Black Forest Adventure Guide specifically states, "Don't try to provoke him, otherwise his bee colony won't show mercy to you." Don't ask me how I know. Keywords of the novel. Beekeepers in the Magical World without pop-ups, complete collection download of Beekeepers in the Magical World TXT, latest chapter reading of Beekeepers in the Magical World. Chapter 1. Blue Bee. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Blue Bee Negative Review. After buying it and putting it in the bottle for a period of time, sediment appears in the bottle, which is also too easy to spoil. I still put it in the refrigerator. Don't buy fake ones, they taste sour. Claiming to have zero additives, but using this fake product to deceive people. Reported. Huayu Town is not working now. This kind of individual beekeeper is really unreliable. Honey still needs to be purchased from a big brand with guaranteed quality, and the taste are much better. Looking at the few new negative comments added in the comments section, Hua Mi's blood pressure instantly rose, and her good mood for the day came to an end. It's not that he has a narrow mind. He opens an online store to sell honey, so he is not afraid of negative reviews and complaints from customers. As long as your comments are reasonable and well-founded, he will naturally humbly accept their opinions and make improvements. The problem is that these negative reviews are typical layman's words. Firstly, regarding sediment. What is honey? It is a supersaturated liquid that is prone to producing glucose crystals within a certain temperature range. If it is not present, it can only indicate that the Baumé concentration is too low. Simply put, it is a low-quality product with too much water content. Secondly, regarding the taste, there are significant differences in the taste of honey produced by different flower species, and different bee species also have some influence. However, pure natural honey has a somewhat sour taste. If not, it indicates that additives have been used to compensate for this aspect of taste. The honey sold by Hua Mi claims to have zero additives, so there is absolutely no need to add anything other than honey. The ingredient list only includes honey as one ingredient, which can be brewed by raising bees on your own. You are innocent, old and young. But these ordinary people don't know that when they get used to industrial saccharin, they may feel that the taste is not right when they first eat something purely natural. Hua Mi originally intended to reply to each of these negative comments one by one, but her finger was hanging on the keyboard and she didn't press it for a long time, staring blankly at the screen. At this point, the reply is of little use. The days of beekeepers are becoming increasingly difficult. On the store's promotional page, the words, "produced by Huayu Town," used to be a guarantee of quality and reputation, but now it seems like a joke. Once upon a time, the three words, Huayu Town, were industry benchmarks. Huayu Town is a small town with a long history. Most of the indigenous people have the surname Hua, with half engaged in beekeeping and the other half engaged in flower cultivation. Here, flowers are abundant and the environment is beautiful. The honey produced has a unique taste and is cheap, and is sold throughout the country. Hua Mi has always been proud of his hometown since childhood. The colorful flower fields and the sweet taste of honey are fond memories of his childhood. So he decisively returned and inherited his grandfather's beekeeping career. Unfortunately, the situation was not favorable. Within a year of taking over, Huayu Town began to decline and has now fallen to the bottom. Of course, in addition to the current rampant industrial blending of honey in the market, there are also reasons for the existence of Huayu Town itself. The environmental problems brought about by industrial development are becoming increasingly severe, and Huayu Town is not a paradise and cannot avoid being affected. For example, due to changes in environmental factors, the quality of several special flowers in Huayu Town has greatly decreased, and some even cannot be grown at all. Even if grown, they cannot be kept alive and are expected to become extinct soon. There is an industrial smell in the air, and the falling flower river passes through the middle of Huayu Town. It is so clear in memory, but now it is almost like a stinky ditch. How can good honey be brewed in such an environment? The advantages of additive-free honey have been smoothed out, even becoming a disadvantage. And those honey with various artificial additives have a much better taste. Moreover, it doesn't matter whether the nectar is collected or not, even if the bees are kept indoors and fed with sugar water. Anyway, the taste can be adjusted by additives, which not only saves the cost of planting flowers, but also ensures the yield throughout the year. Under the dual impact, most beekeepers in Huayu Town have been forced to change careers, with only a few remaining who are still persevering. I can't hold on anymore. That sweet and pure taste, just like my childhood, is gone forever. Huami sighed and closed the store interface, out of sight and out of mind. He stood up and walked towards the backyard. Several flower fields were originally planned in the backyard, but now only one of them is planted, which is still the most common rapeseed flower. Looking around, it looks a dim yellow. Experienced beekeepers know that the growth of honey source flowers is related to the strength of bee colonies, and the two are interdependent. 30 beehives are scattered around the flower field, and bees can be seen rising and falling with the naked eye. At his best, he owned over 100 beehives and was considered a beekeeper. But life is often like this, getting better slowly enduring, getting worse quickly slipping away. Rolling downhill is much easier than going uphill. Now there are only 30 beehives left, each containing only 6,000 or 7,000 bees, all of which are Chinese bees, commonly known as native bees. During the flowering period, which was supposed to be the most active period of the bee colony, the visible fatigue in front of us made some worker bees simply lie in their hives and refuse to come out, making them feel unworthy of the term, hardworking little bee. Beekeeping pursues a strong bee colony, which means a long overall lifespan, strong resistance, and high productivity. The most intuitive manifestation is the high efficiency and quality of honey production, which can be understood as an elite force. On the contrary, weak bee colonies are like armies of old, weak, sick, and disabled, with greatly reduced combat capabilities. The strength of a bee colony is not only related to the species, but also closely related to the environment. These 30 groups of bees seem to have also seen the fate of being eliminated, just like their own owners, unable to muster energy. Of course, with China being so large, there are always places suitable for beekeeping, such as New Province, where natural conditions are very suitable. But it takes a lot of courage to leave the land where his ancestors have lived for generations and go to other places to work hard. Besides, transportation costs are also a problem, and his current asset situation is no longer up to him to mess around. Huami walked to the middle of the flower field without wearing any protective gear. Bees have a strong sense of territory and collective consciousness. Generally, when people stand in the middle, they are easily stung into pig heads. However, as a beekeeper, he stayed in the bee colony for a long time, and once the bees became familiar with him, they would hardly attack him unless they killed themselves. You little ones, don't slack off, enjoy your blessings. When Huami bent down to look at the bees, she unexpectedly saw a strange bee lying on the rapeseed flower, which looked out of place with the surrounding local bees. Even with Huami's familiarity with bees, it is impossible to tell what breed this is. It is very small, even smaller than a wasp, with a light blue color throughout its body. There are circles of white patterns on its body, and the most peculiar one is its pair of compound eyes, which are also circles of patterns, similar to the reincarnation eyes. Strictly speaking, this can no longer be called compound eyes. Mutant bees. But this has become too much, right? A bit detached from Hua Mi's perception, he didn't dare to touch it. He originally wanted to take a photo with his phone, but when he touched his pocket, he found that he hadn't brought it out. At this moment, the strange blue beak suddenly flew up and danced in a circular dance in front of Hua Mi, with a very ordinary elliptical trajectory. This is the instinctive behavior of bees. Hua Mi has seen it too much and there is nothing strange about it, but the next scene almost shattered her worldview. The blue bee drags a blue trail, forming an oval-shaped hole in mid-air, filled with psychedelic colors, like a portal in a game. From the reactions of the surrounding worker bees, it can be seen that they are unaware of the existence of this wormhole, and many worker bees even pass through it without any impact, like a false image formed by some optical phenomenon. Hua Mi had an impulse to reach out and explore. The blue bee took the opportunity to land on the back of his hand, and the pincer pierced in at once. Hiss. Hua Mi was awakened by the piercing pain. The blue bee lay steadily on the back of his hand, but its body slowly became transparent. In contrast, a light blue pattern appeared on the stung area, as if the color of the blue bee had been injected into Hua Mi's hand through a pincer. In just 2 or 3 seconds, the blue bee disappeared completely, as if it had never existed before. Hua Mi suddenly spun around, lost her balance, fell forward, and coincidentally fell into the wormhole, disappearing from the flower field in an instant. The wormhole also closed in an instant. The rapeseed field is quiet, and the little bees are working hard. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Moonlight Sleep Flower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Moonlight Sleep Flower Poppet. Cough. Hua Mi wobbled up from the ground, fanning away the dust and looking around. This is a quaint-style small wooden house, obviously abandoned for a long time, with only a pair of tables and chairs, a wooden bed, and dusty floors and furniture. Some bottles, jars, books, and paper are randomly arranged. Have you traveled through it? Hua Mi pinched herself and felt the pain very real. It shouldn't be an illusion. He glanced at the back of his hand and saw that the area where the blue bee had stung was no longer painful, but a light blue pattern appeared around the wound. In an instant, his soul was blessed, and he instinctively lifted his hand and drew an ellipse in the air. In this simple way, a psychedelic wormhole appeared in front of him and rapidly expanded into a portal that could accommodate one person to pass through. Hua Mi took a deep breath and passed through. The next second, my feet landed on the soft soil, and the familiar buzzing sound kept ringing in my ears. He returned to his own flower field. It's amazing. After realizing that she could double wear, Hua Mi became excited. The portal did not disappear immediately this time, as if it was controlled by his consciousness. After calming down, he returned to the small wooden house. I didn't feel any danger, but let's familiarize ourselves with the environment here first. Hua Mi walked to the only wooden table in the wooden house and glanced at the clutter on it. Most of them are transparent glass products similar to test tubes, beakers, etc., and there are also some pottery jars that contain things that have already oxidized into black mud, making it difficult to distinguish their true colors. The scattered books have also become clumps, unable to be opened at all. Only the appearance can distinguish the original book. In this pile of junk, that black skin already appears particularly special. Smashing and dropping dust, the surface still looks shiny, and opening it inside looks like new. On the homepage, there was a line of text that looked very distorted. It should be a foreign language that does not exist on Earth, but Hua Mi was miraculously able to understand it and was very familiar with it, just like her mother tongue. Perhaps it was the ability bestowed upon her by that blue bee. Translated, it can be replaced with 4 Chinese characters. Alchemy notes. Is it a note left by the owner of this wooden house? Hua Mi was uncertain in his heart because he realized that it was likely a magical world. Alchemy, combined with these bottles and jars, is the owner of the wooden house a legendary alchemist. It seems that magical magic has also been applied to this notebook to ensure that it is not corroded, further supporting his speculation. Hua Mi flipped through her notes for a while and found that the content was very simple, which was to introduce some materials, animals and plants by region. For example, in the first part of the opening, the location introduced is the location of this wooden house. Black Witch Forest. Abbreviated as Black Forest. So this place is a forest. Hua Mi couldn't wait to go out and take a look. There is too much dust in this dilapidated wooden house and rhinitis is about to occur. There are 2 doors, one front and one back. Hua Mi didn't think much and walked towards the back door that was close to her. Jia, as the wooden door opened, the bright sunlight poured down on him, making him feel as if he was soaking in a hot spring, warm and cozy. As his eyes adapted to the outside light, he saw a fairy tale-like scene. The backyard is a flower garden, planted with some pure white flowers. These flowers have a curved shape on one side, like crescents, which have been left unattended for a long time and grow wild. They have already broken through the wooden fence in the backyard and spread towards the deep forest in the distance. Hua Mi opened her notebook and quickly flipped through a few pages, stopping on one of them. The sketch on it was the white flower in front of her. Moonlight flower, water flowing in moon opening, water full moon peak, water resting in moon decaying, ice age withering. With fragrance, it can automatically absorb the essence of the moon, easy to nourish, observe the fluorescence in the dark to judge its growth. The basic materials for preparing hypnotic magic drugs such as sleeping pills and brain-numbing pills can also be used to neutralize some strong magic drugs, such as mutation attractants. Sure enough, magic crops. As a beekeeper, especially from Huayu town, Hua Mi has a special affection for flowers. The sea of flowers in front of him intoxicated him. Although the flower garden is full of weeds, it does not diminish the beauty of the moonflower, but instead highlights its noble and pure nature. The wooden house is surrounded by large trees, which are twice as tall as trees on Earth and have lush canopies. However, due to the distance between them, the canopies do not block the sunlight. What surprised Hua Mi the most was the extremely fresh air here. Accustomed to the air polluted by industrialization, coming here suddenly feels like a fairyland. This is the true natural taste, and the fragrance of the moonflower is the icing on the cake. Hua Mi greedily breathed in the air here. Suddenly, he saw a familiar little figure flying into the flower bushes, rising and falling several times, and lying on a sleeping flower to start collecting. That is a little wasp. It should have been brought over by lying on top of him. The activity of bees is greatly influenced by the environment, and the difference between the excited appearance of that little bee and its wilting appearance in the original environment is too obvious. Obviously, just like his intuition, the environment here is very suitable for beekeeping and honey making. It seems that this side is in the nectar period of the moon sleeping flower. According to the notes, it should be the water full moon now. The month division here is completely different from that of Earth. Just now, I didn't see a bee in such a suitable place for collecting honey, indicating that there may not be a bee species in this world. Hua Mi suddenly had a strange idea that the honey brewed from the nectar of the moon sleeping flower had an unknown taste. Will the honey of this magical plant come with special magical effects? Reasonable inference is highly likely. In Hua Mi's heart, a plan quickly took shape. He wants to keep bees here to make honey. Brew various magical honey, just like an alchemist. Continuously pursuing higher quality flower seeds and honey is like a mountaineer constantly challenging themselves to climb higher peaks. Hua Mi's thinking couldn't help but diverge, imagining the most wonderful development. Anyway, thinking about it doesn't cost any money. Even if you're tempted, take action. Hua Mi ambitiously carved out a wormhole and threaded back into her own flower field. What a polluted air. Without comparison, there is no harm, and I suddenly feel that the creatures living in this world are really pitiful. The sudden appearance startled the bee colony, and the little bees took off in an attacking posture. However, when they saw that it was a keeper, they let down their guard and continued to dive down to collect honey. Hua Mi suddenly realized a problem. At present, it is still daytime, and the hornet has rhythmic behavior. They work during the day and rest at night, and are now unwilling to return to the box. We can only talk about it later tonight. Bees are not like dogs, they obediently go wherever they are asked, and to some extent, beekeepers can only rely on biological laws. But something magical happened again. Huami looked at the group of bees in front of her, and the idea of making them return to the hive arose. Her brain seemed to flash an electric current, creating a conscious connection with the will of the bees. It's a wonderful experience. In this state, he can accurately locate every bee in the bee colony, and explore the state of each bee. The queen bee, male bee, worker bee, are all under his control, like an extension of his own body. Return to the hive. This command is issued by the mind, and the bee colony instantly stops collecting honey and flies towards the hive. In just a few seconds, it completely returns to its original position. I'll go, this is really amazing. Huami was shocked by her own move. With this skill, why not become the world's #1 beekeeper? Ignoring the biological habits of bees, they can go wherever they want, and sting whoever they want. Cough, honey picking is the right thing. Someone was bitten by a spider and gained superpowers to become Spider-Man. I was stung by a bee and also gained superpowers. Should I be called Bee-Man? It's too ugly, just like a little cutie, lacking courage. There's no way, compared to creatures like spiders and bats, bees are perceived as a group of hardworking and cute little elves. However, it seems that he can only control a group of bees at most at once. Attempting to control multiple groups makes it difficult to concentrate. As the bee colony gradually returned to its nest, the buzzing gradually weakened and the flower field returned to tranquility. Without further ado, start moving. There are only 30 boxes in total, and he can quickly handle it alone. During this period, Huami specifically experimented with her time-traveling ability. As long as it is carried with him, it can be carried over, whether it is dead or living creatures like bees. But crossing can only be done at a fixed point between one's own flower field and the opposite alchemy cabin. That is to say, if he leaves the flower field area on this side, or leaves the cabin area on the other side, he will not be able to draw a wormhole. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Mutant Inducers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Mutant Inducers quickly transported 30 beehives. There wasn't much discomfort from traveling back and forth continuously, but I felt a bit dizzy and nauseous. After resting for a while and taking a few bites of honey, I recovered. 30 beehives were neatly arranged in the backyard, and most of the bees initially huddled inside the boxes without coming out. Huami did not use his will to command them to come out. He felt that this move could be used, but it should not be used casually. Experience taught him not to go against the biological habits of bees easily, which may cause some negative consequences and not worth the loss. This is a suitable honey gathering place, just wait for the little bees to discover it themselves. After a while, several first bee teams flew out of each beehive, hovering in the air for a moment before heading straight towards the vast expanse of white moonflowers. After discovering the honey source, the first bee team returns to the beehive and performs a surround dance in the air. This is their way of transmitting information, accurately conveying the position and distance of the honey source through the amplitude and direction of twisting. Even the taste and quality of nectar can be contained in the dance movements. Don't doubt the intelligence of the bee population. Bees are a magical creature, and although they may not be intelligent enough, their overall operational efficiency is quite high. Many beekeepers actually view a colony as an individual, and each bee inside is like a single cell. For example, the honeycomb they built has all obtuse angles of 109 degrees 28 and all acute angles of 70 degrees 32 minutes on the honeycomb chassis, which can consume the least amount of material to create the maximum space. He is simply a genius designer. The bees that received the information rushed out and flew towards the moon sleeping flower bed in a flurry. This is probably the first time that the buzzing of a bee colony has sounded in this world, like the first cry of a baby. I will make bees fly to every corner of this world. Hua Mi is ambitious. The road needs to be walked step by step. Although bees are motivated by new honey sources and excellent environments, their enthusiasm has improved. However, some habits cannot be changed overnight. Switching to a better environment has an effect, but the short-term effect is limited. Essentially, this is still 30-week bee colonies. Seeing the little bees start working hard, Hua Mi smiled contentedly like a capitalist, went back and brought a lounge chair over, lying comfortably under the eaves reading notes. Normally, it takes about a week for bees to fill the entire hive's honey spleen when collecting honey, especially for weak colonies, which may take 10 days to fill. After sealing with wax, it takes another 10 days to brew. The brewing process is actually about bees flapping their wings to evaporate water, increase the Baumé concentration of honey, and use digestive enzymes to break down sucrose into monosaccharides such as glucose and fructose. It will take about 20 days to complete the production of this batch of moonflower honey overall. I can't come in a hurry. This alchemy notebook records unfamiliar things, unheard of magical creatures and materials, covering various terrains around the world, such as mountains, lakes, forests, swamps, canyons, deserts, gobi, ice fields, etc. It takes a lot of brainpower, and soon the brain becomes a paste. I can't remember even after reading it, so I'll wait until I need it and use it as a reference book. Let's do a thorough cleaning. Hua Mi decided to combine mental and physical labor alternately. This place has not been visited for many years, and it's not just dirty and messy. In the future, we should come and go often, and it is comfortable to clean up. The owner of the small wooden house doesn't know where he went or whether he is still alive. He probably took away most of the supplies because the room was too spacious and there were no daily necessities. There is a high possibility of moving. But strangely, the alchemy notebook that carried his painstaking efforts was not taken away. Is it simply forgotten or is there any other reason? Hua Mi traveled back and took tools such as a broom, a cloth, and a bucket. She put on cleaning clothes, folded a temporary hat from a newspaper, and put it on her head to start a big cleaning. Don't be fooled by the small size of this wooden house, it takes quite some time to clean every corner. First, clean up all the accumulated dust, and finally reveal the true nature of the wood. The building materials for this wooden house are made of hardwood, which may have undergone some special treatment, so there are no signs of decay or insect infestation, and the cleaning work is actually not too troublesome. The main task is to use a small shovel to remove aged dirt from the gaps in the wooden boards. This job has little technical content, but it is tiring. Fortunately, the wooden house has a small area. When I was cleaning up next to the wooden bed, the wooden board under my hand suddenly snapped and pried open a crack, and I felt a faint airflow blowing out from the crack. Upon closer inspection, Hua Mi noticed that this seemed to be a hinged door. Previously filled with dirt, so I didn't notice it. Hua Mi moved the shovel along the gap, found the best force point, and with a strong pry, she was able to pry open a wooden door that could accommodate one person to pass through. At the moment of opening, a cold and gloomy airflow rushed towards us. A stone staircase leads down to the bottom, and 1 meter away is a pitch-black area where nothing can be seen clearly. Originally, there is still space below. Hua Mi walked back home and brought a flashlight. Looking down, it's pitch black and hard to see clearly. There shouldn't be any danger, right? This magical world is still in a completely unfamiliar state for him, and he dare not take risks. What if there's a magic spider lurking underneath? This also reminded him that it was best to bring some weapons over for self-defense, as he could buy many good things from online wilderness survival specialty stores. But right now, he doesn't have any self-defense tools on hand, so he really dares not rashly go down. I'm really curious again. After thinking for a moment, he released his thoughts and controlled a swarm of worker bees to pause honey gathering, fly into the cabin, hover in the air for a while, adjust the formation, and a swarm of bees plunged into the underground passage. He can only manipulate bees and perceive their state, but he cannot share his vision, so having bees act as his line of sight is purely overthinking. This is simply to explore the way, and if there are any dangerous monsters below, the swarm of bees flying down will definitely cause a disturbance. Don't worry about losing this colony either. The individual bees are weak, but the bee colony as a whole has strong combat power and can kill a bear that steals honey and make it run around like a mouse. In addition, with the assistance of Huami, at most some bees will be lost, preventing the entire army from being destroyed. The buzzing sound gradually echoed. Soon, the bee arrived at a larger space, which should have reached its end. After hovering for a while, I roughly figured out the size of the lower level space, which is smaller than the small wooden house above. There should be no living creatures. Huami let go and walked down with a flashlight. Alchemy Workshop. In the moment she saw the scene below, the word popped up in Huami's mind. The layout is quite simple, with a shelf placed against the wall and scattered glass bottles on the shelf. There is a black robe covered in dust hanging on the nearby hanger. There is a strange-looking big belly black pot on the ground in the middle. There are several lines of raised inscriptions on the pot, also written in a foreign language. Semi-automatic alchemy kettle. Mr. M is dedicated to creating it, a blessing for lazy cancer patients. Note: only alchemy creations of magical potions can be refined, and the refining results can only guarantee medium quality. There is also a possibility of failure when refining advanced magical potions. Semi-automatic. If this is the same as a semi-automatic washing machine, doesn't it mean that you just need to throw the alchemy materials inside and press the switch to automatically complete the alchemy process? Although there are many restrictions, for an earth person without any knowledge of alchemy, this is definitely a good thing. But where is the switch? Huami circled around and saw a groove in the lower position, from which many striped paths spread out, covering the entire pot body. Where to put the battery? A substance that can release energy should be placed here, like a battery in the original world, but looking around the entire basement, there is no similar thing. However, even if there is a battery, it is useless without an alchemy formula, and it is useless to dwell here. Huami shifted her attention to the nearby shelf again. Most of them are empty bottles, but there is a small bottle the size of a palm lying at the corner, with half of the transparent liquid inside. After correction, read the words on the label clearly. Primary mutation inducer, regular version. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Breaking the Cocoon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Breaking the Cocoon. From the name, this reagent is used to induce biological mutations. What is mutation? Simply put, it means a change in biological traits. And it must be a genetic trait that can be inherited. Some mutations are beneficial for organisms, which is called evolution, but the probability is very low. Mutations are likely to be meaningless or even harmful, and sudden death on the spot is not impossible. Huami came up with a bold idea. This mutation inducer can be utilized. Of course not for personal use, he doesn't take it too hard. So many bees, aren't they just ready-made experimental subjects? Bees are small in size, and the estimated amount of medication needed for each one is also very small. This half bottle of mutation inducer is definitely sufficient in a short period of time. As a beekeeper, cultivating better new bee species is a great temptation for him. And this is a magical world, everything is possible. Not to mention cultivating highly productive bees, it is not surprising to even cultivate bees that can teleport. If you still stick to your old ways and don't dare to let go, it's simply a waste of this opportunity. First, take some worker bees to test the water. The number of worker bees in the entire bee colony is the highest, accounting for over 99%, and they are the least valuable. It's not a big deal to lose dozens or even hundreds of them. Huami selected 50 worker bees with strong vitality to stay behind, and let the rest continue to gather honey. He picked up the mutation inducer bottle, pulled out the stopper with a boom sound, and sniffed it with a fan. There was no special smell, just like plain water. Shouldn't it have expired? Huami poured a little on the wooden board of the shelf and controlled 50 bees to gather around and suck. A pool of reagents was quickly absorbed. After waiting for about 5 minutes, Huami clearly sensed that these 50 bees were exhibiting varying degrees of abnormality, as if a violent force was gathering in their bodies and ready to unleash. This is very similar to the state when bees are about to break out of their cocoons and emerge, which also stimulates their instinct to return to their nests and cocoon. Huami did not intervene, allowing them to fly back to the hive and secreting wax to seal themselves inside the hive. Generally speaking, this situation occurs only once in a bee's life, when the larvae break out of the cocoon and emerge as bees. I don't know what it looks like when the cocoon breaks out during the adult stage. All we can do is wait. The sky gradually darkened, and in the blink of an eye, it was already dusk. Due to the obstruction of trees in the forest, the sky darkens relatively quickly. Bees, in simple terms, rely on the intensity of light to regulate their activities, but regardless of whether it's time for work or not, places like Xinjiang with longer light hours are suitable for beekeeping. The bee colony has gradually begun to fly back to the hive to lie down. Huami is also exhausted and ready to go back to rest. He is considering whether to move the beehive back. It's too troublesome to go back and forth, and he checked the area and found no signs of animal activity. There shouldn't be any problem placing the beehive here. Besides, bees are not a species that can be slaughtered by humans, and they will have measures to deal with danger. Huami then only moved the beehive into the wooden house, brought a notebook, and traveled back to her own flower field. It's completely dark here. Huayu town is different from those big cities in that there is not much nightlife and it becomes very quiet at night. Huami had a simple meal and went to an online survival specialty store to buy adventure-exclusive items such as a dagger, first aid kit, compressed biscuits, etc. She also found another store to buy a composite bow. Composite bows are not restricted items and can be purchased at will. After the equipment arrives and everything is arranged properly, he plans to go out and explore. We can't just press the sleeping flowers and pull them hard. The flowering period will always come to an end. Who knows how long the water-filled moon can last? We need to find new sources of honey flowers to ensure uninterrupted honey production. Having this alchemy notebook as a reference book is of great help to him in searching for new sources of honey and flowers. In the future, if conditions permit, it is possible to operate greenhouses, which can to some extent eliminate the restrictions of external environmental changes on flowers, but it is obvious that such conditions are not yet available. I was really tired today. Huami lay in bed and read her notes for a while, then she tilted her head and fell asleep. I slept until after 9 o'clock the next morning before waking up. Thinking about the beehive and the 50 cocooned worker bees in her heart, Huami didn't have the heart to eat well. She dug out a bag of instant noodles and soaked it, got up, and went to open the door to ventilate. The front yard is certainly much smaller than the flower field behind, but it is very clean and unique. This is his ancestral home. Although it's a bit old, the feng shui is very good. It's backed by a flat and fertile land, and further away is the mountains. There is also an artificial pond, which is very suitable for planting and keeping bees. So we decided to use it as a beekeeping ground and honey processing factory. Beekeeping, honey making, and delivery are all one-stop services. At the best of his business, he owned 100 beehives and planted 5 or 6 different types of honey flowers with different flowering periods in the flower fields. Tired is a bit tiring, but it can ensure maximum yield, and during that period, the profits were quite substantial. Later on, it may have been because the heavens were afraid that he would be tired, which cut off his financial luck and left him idle at home. Business was declining day by day, and now there are only 30 boxes left. Previously, Huayu Town was a feng shui treasure trove for beekeeping, but now the environment is no longer advantageous, and its reputation has plummeted. The era of Huayu Town has come to an end, which cannot be denied. However, the new era may not necessarily have to be initiated by those industrialized bee companies. After a few minutes of eating instant noodles and drinking a cup of honey water, Huami couldn't wait to enter the flower field, cut open a wormhole, and travel to a different world. The sky is not yet bright in another world. The backyard is a sea of moonlit flowers, emitting a bright silver light, like crescent moons. Silver dots of light rose up from the sea of flowers, disappearing from a height of several meters above. A huge moon hangs in the night sky, emitting a bright light that looks at least 10 times that of the Earth's satellite. The sea of flowers on the ground complements each other and is breathtaking. This is nature. Huami gazed at the full moon with infatuation. He can enjoy such beautiful scenery for a whole day. The moon slowly sets, and on the other side of the sky, there is a white fish belly, and soon the sun rises. The sun here is similar to the Earth, and it feels that the temperature and brightness are more suitable for human habitation. The hard-working little bees flew out of the beehive one after another and flocked towards the sea of flowers. The familiar buzzing sound reassured him. Experienced beekeepers can judge the strength of a bee colony simply by listening to sound. His group of bees were clearly stronger than yesterday, and upon closer inspection, it was evident that their vitality had generally increased due to environmental influences and the taste of high-quality nectar. And what concerns him the most is the 50 worker bees that cocoon. As the sky gradually brightened, they began to break through their cocoons. However, only 34 of the worker bees attempted to break the cocoon, while the remaining 16 remained motionless and completely imperceptible, clearly dead. The mortality rate is a bit high. The 34 still alive worker bees began to emerge one after another from their cocoons. The first one, swaying and flying out, plunged to the ground, but could no longer fly. Upon closer inspection, its wings were deformed. The second one, with exceptionally strong vitality and strong aggression, killed several bees without paying attention and was promptly dealt with by Huami after being discovered. The third one had a malformed mouthpiece and lost its honey-gathering function. The fourth one is blind. In fact, half of the 34 living worker bees lost their vitality during the process of breaking their cocoons and did not crawl out, so they were suffocated alive inside. Huami believed that there was no need to help them out. They were so weak that their cocoon could not be broken, indicating that evolution had failed. There won't be even a favorable mutation, right? There's still a guarantee for drawing cards. He doesn't really care about these 50 worker bees. For a colony, these 50 worker bees are a loss they can afford. Just a little disappointed. It seems that even in the magical world, the cultivation of new bee species is not as simple as imagined. At this moment, a newly hatched bee caught his attention. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Forest Rapid Bee. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Forest Rapid Bee. The appearance of that worker bee has not changed much, and its body surface is still mainly yellow-black. However, the color has deepened a bit, and its wings have become thicker and no longer transparent. It is covered with fine black lines. Being able to perceive its vitality has become much stronger. The most crucial thing is that its wing flapping frequency is very fast. Huami controlled it to fly a few laps in the air, with an estimated speed equivalent to twice that of an ordinary bee. And there were no unfavorable traits exhibited. Huami evaluates the strength of a bee species using 3 attributes. One is lifespan. The second is reproductive capacity. The third is productivity. The third, productivity, is mainly related to the structure and mobility of bees themselves. Bees have a structure called a honey sac, which is a place to store nectar. The amount of nectar they can carry back to their nest at once depends on their size. The larger the honey sac, the higher the efficiency. The ability to move goes without saying, the faster the flight speed, the shorter the round-trip time. This mutated wasp has doubled its speed, greatly improving the efficiency of collecting honey. Although it's not a particularly prominent mutation, I can finally get my hands on it. Now this mutated wasp should be the fastest bee in the world. Unfortunately, there is only one. The method of using mutation inducers to induce mutation is uncontrollable, and the probability of successfully evolving favorable traits is very low. Evolving one out of these 50 bees feels like novice protection. According to normal probability, it may take a bee colony as a cost to evolve a new bee. However, after having more bee colonies, a portion can be specifically taken out for experimentation. After there are many mutated bee species, one can try to use hybridization to give birth to new bee species. If mutation inducers are understood as chemical means, then hybridization is biological means. Compared to mutation inducers, hybridization is safer and more cost-effective. Just need the bees to perk up their spirits. And hybridization can summarize patterns, to some extent, control the direction of variation, and systematically produce more and stronger bee species. In short, building more bee colonies is the top priority. Huami took out her alchemy notes, flipped to a blank page, and wrote down the 6-character title, Illustrated Guide to Mutated Bee Species. The characteristic of this mutated wasp is its fast speed, and it is also born in the forest, so let's call it the forest rapid bee. Huami wrote the 4 words, forest rapid bee, on paper. The forest hornet, derived from the Chinese honeybee, has a flight speed twice that of the Chinese honeybee, and its activity time is the same as that of the Chinese honeybee. It rises during the day and falls during the night. Its appearance is mainly yellow and black, with darker colors, thicker wings, no longer transparent, and covered with black fine lines. Additionally, regarding the 3 attributes of bee colonies: lifespan, productivity, and reproductive capacity, it is necessary to make a record. If using the Chinese honeybee as the standard, all 3 attributes are set to 1. So the productivity of forest wasps should be set at 2, and the amount of nectar collected in a single collection has not increased. The advantage is mainly reflected in the speed of movement. In addition, there is lifespan and reproductive ability. He thought it needed observation to determine. However, after carefully touching the forest wasp, he realized that he could clearly perceive its body state and abstracted it into attribute information. By comparing it with ordinary bees, one can roughly determine how many times their lifespan and reproductive ability are compared to ordinary bees. Life. 0.5, reproductive power. 3, productivity. 2. The lifespan is only half that of an ordinary bee. It's no wonder that the physiological activity of the rapid bee is more rapid, burning life and having a shorter lifespan is also reasonable. His reproductive ability gave him a small surprise, which was 3 times that of ordinary bee species. This compensates for the short lifespan, as high reproductive ability means that it takes less time to conceive a new batch of bees. Just like a human population with a higher birth rate than death rate, the bee colony as a whole will exhibit strong vitality. The number of individual bees in a bee colony will significantly increase, and the colony's ability to resist risks will also be significantly enhanced. The ability to gather honey goes without saying, estimated to be more than twice that of ordinary bees. The more Huami explores, the more joyful she becomes. No beekeeper can resist the temptation of excellent new bee species. Suddenly, Huami felt a strange sensation on the back of her hand where she had been stung for a long time, and began to feel hot and numb. This strange feeling spreads from the back of the hand to the forehead. He had another vision of the small blue bee, and its phantom was right in the center of his field of vision. Is there any remaining momentum? Huami saw a flower in front of her, and then she saw a hazy blue light extending from the blue bee, connected to the forest hornet. This process lasted less than a minute before the connection was disconnected. Huami quickly investigated and found that there were no issues with the individual of the forest wasp, which relieved her. And the blue bee in the field of vision, beneath it, appeared the phantom of another bee, which appeared to be the forest swift bee. This is a phenomenon he saw intuitively, and the meaning it represents was almost instantly understood by him. Just now, this blue bee, no, more precisely, was endowed with superpowers by the blue bee, replicating the excellent traits of the forest swift bee. Moreover, he can transmit this trait in reverse to the evolved mother, which is the ordinary Chinese bee, allowing the ordinary bee to evolve into a forest wasp. Give it a try. Hua Mi controls an ordinary worker bee to fly over. He focused his attention and consciously injected the forest bee template into the body of ordinary worker bees. Quickly, there was a noticeable change in the body of this worker bee, with a force ready to unleash, just like before the bee mutated into a forest wasp. This worker bee also flew back into the hive and began to secrete wax and cocoon. But converting one by one is still quite troublesome. You should know that there are at least 7,000 to 8,000 individual bees in a bee colony, and if they are transformed one by one, should we do anything else? Hua Mi controlled a group of bees to pause honey gathering and flew back, including the remaining bees in the hive, all of whom came out and lined up neatly above the hive. He focused his attention, this time not on a single individual, but on the entire bee colony. Let the template of the forest bee cover the entire colony. Although it took a bit longer this time, about 2 minutes, it was still successful. The colony undergoes a collective change and returns to the hive to secrete wax and cocoon. Great! With this ability, there is no need to spend a lot of time and effort considering the problem of allowing new bee species to reproduce and expand into colonies. In just one night, he can create a whole new bee colony. Hua Mi took a deep breath to calm herself down. That is to say, as long as a new bee species mutates, I can record this new bee species and quickly expand it into a colony. Hua Mi did 2 things next. The first thing is to gather 50 male bees and 50 worker bees from the remaining 29 beehives, with an average of 3 to 4 bees per hive. They are then given mutation attractants to try evolution. The structure of a bee colony is actually very simple. In addition to worker bees, there is only one queen bee and dozens of male bees in a beehive. The role of male bees is only one, which is to provide male reproductive cells for the queen bee. Generally speaking, queen bees only mate with multiple male bees in a short period of time throughout their lives, and then store male reproductive cells in the body for lifelong use. Under normal circumstances, the queen bee can lay thousands of eggs within 24 hours during its peak period, at least 700 to 800 are not a problem. Most develop into worker bees, while a few develop into male bees. The proportion mainly depends on the number of worker and male beehives. After laying eggs, queen bees generally do not need to mate anymore because they have enough stock in their bodies. After completing the mating task, the male bees are no longer needed because their reproductive organs remain inside the queen bee's body, and their internal organs are pulled out, leaving only a dead end in the end. Even if they survive, they will be driven away by worker bees and starve to death. He did not experiment with the queen bee. There was only one queen in each colony. Without the queen bee, there would be a big problem, and there was a possibility of rescue, but there was a high probability that the entire army would be destroyed. I hope there are individuals who have evolved successfully, even one is fine. So he can replicate the template and create the bee colony. Hua Mi silently recited the blessings of her ancestor in her heart, but then realized that praying in a different world may not necessarily be heard by her ancestor. It's just that, don't rely on metaphysics anymore. Following the objective laws of science is the key to success. We need to use scientific methods to cultivate magical bees and brew magical honey. The second thing is that Hua Mi wants to transform all of her ordinary bee colonies into forest bee colonies. Of course, during the process of evolution, it is inevitable for bees to stop collecting honey for a period of time. But sharpening the knife does not delay the woodcutter. A bee species with twice the collection ability means that the production time of a batch of honey can be reduced by half. Which beekeeper can resist this temptation? But when he transformed to the 10th bee colony, he felt disoriented and had difficulty concentrating. Template conversion is not without cost, it requires mental energy. Huami had to stop, and at this moment his brain was as fragmented as if he had been working on high math problems for 3 hours in a row. Lying down on the lounge chair, tilting his head, he peacefully slept over. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. 100 Companies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. 100 Companies. I didn't expect to wake up in the middle of the night. The bees have already returned to their nests to rest, and the forest is very quiet except for the chirping of insects. Huami lay lazily on the chair, feeling a bit lethargic. Her stomach was growling with hunger and she didn't want to move. Ow! A howl resembling a wolf but not a wolf came from deep in the forest. Huami bounced out of the recliner and her consciousness immediately became clearer. He took advantage of the moonlight and hurriedly moved the beehive back to the wooden house. I checked the 10 bee colonies injected with the forest rapid bee template and they haven't broken their cocoons yet. It seems to be slower than the first forest hornet. Anyway, let's talk about it tomorrow. Returning home, Huami was eating while reading the alchemy notebook. The handwriting is elegant and the sketch is delicate, making it look very comfortable and satisfying to his taste. He focused on the various flowers recorded inside. Just by looking at the description, it is not possible to accurately judge whether it is a honey source flower. Instead, it can be roughly judged based on experience through a sketch, and it is estimated that it is likely to be around 10. But the place names recorded inside are really impressive. Yunding Plateau, Chaotic Sea, Netherworld, Storm Atrium, Giant Ruins. These are all ghost places. He now knows nothing about the other world, only that the place where the cabin is located is called Black Witch Forest, abbreviated as Black Forest. If only there could be a map. However, there are dozens of flowers recorded in the Black Forest alone, and his initial exploration must have been in the forest, so there is no need to run too far. I don't know if there will be a chance to go out of the forest and take a look in the future. Of course, this is the later part. The time division of the alien realm is completely different from that of Earth. Based on the content in the notes, it can be inferred that after the water peak month, it is the water rest month. At that time, the moon sleeping flower will gradually decline. Although flowers may not all wither in an instant, they probably won't shed honey at that time. When there are flowers, there may not be honey. The flowering period is not equal to the nectar flowing period, which is much shorter and usually only flows during the flourishing period of flowers. So for beekeepers, chasing nectar is a very urgent matter, missing it is missing it, there is no room for redemption. According to the notes, there are several types of flowers blooming in the Black Forest, which need to be planned in advance for the next stage of honey harvesting. However, the upcoming Ice Age will be more difficult to manage. The Ice Age, as the name suggests, must be as cold and desolate as winter on Earth. I don't know exactly how high the temperature can reach. If it's too low, then we can't keep bees outdoors. We need to create a temperature-suitable environment for bees. Bees can usually generate heat in their hives to resist the harsh cold outside and ensure that the population winters. Chinese bees have a particularly strong ability to resist harsh environments, much stronger than Italian bees. But there is also a limit, exceeding it will cause damage to the bee colony and consume too much. Beekeepers generally do not let the temperature drop below 0.2 degrees Celsius. And honey source flowers are also a problem. After searching through the records in the Black Forest section of the notes, only one type of flower that bloomed during the Ice Age was found. Translated as, broken crystal flower, the sketch looks sharp and angular, like an ice sculpture artwork. Moreover, it was specifically mentioned in the notes that this is a flower rated as, rare, and has high requirements for its growth environment. The quantity is relatively small, and there may not be many plants in the vast forest at all. It may not necessarily be a honey source flower. The plan to build a greenhouse needs to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. With a greenhouse, one can safely overwinter and use it to accommodate rare flowers with high environmental requirements. The earlier the greenhouse is built, the greater the profit. The space occupation is okay, it's a bit troublesome but it can be resolved. But the construction cost really makes him headache. The next day, Huami had a simple breakfast, tidied up a bit, and carried big and small bags across the world. The sky has just started to dawn here, and it is quiet at dawn. It is during the period of day and night alternation that the chirping of insects and the roar of beasts that can be heard during the day and night fall into silence, making it the quietest time of the day. Huami stacked things on the wooden house floor and let out her consciousness to explore the bee colony. Everything was normal. There is already some honey on the honey spleen of the beehive, and a faint aroma is lingering in the wooden house. Because it has not yet been brewed with wax, it is more like a floral aroma than honey aroma. It is very similar to the fresh and elegant fragrance of the moon sleeping flower. This is the first batch of moonflower honey from 2 worlds. Huami felt a sense of satisfaction in creating and inventing. It's a bit exaggerated to say that witnessing history, but this is just the beginning. Even legends originate from insignificance, isn't it? I am looking forward to the moment when the first batch of magical honey is brewed, and I am not sure if there are any special effects compared to ordinary honey besides the taste. 10 forest bees, as expected, have all been transformed. This is the first new bee species he has cultivated, and due to the influence of magic, the difficulty is not that high, but it still has a sense of achievement. After admiring the heroic appearance of the forest wasp for a while, Huami invited them to join the honey-gathering team. Among the numerous bees, it is easy to distinguish which are ordinary Chinese bees and which are forest wasps. It looks like the forest rapid bee is playing at 2x speed. Compared to ordinary bees, it's really obvious, like a special forces soldier among bees. With the addition and support of these 10 powerful new bee species, the honey harvesting efficiency has been greatly improved. If all 30 bee colonies are transformed into forest bees and the honey gathering speed is increased by more than twice, the originally expected time can also be shortened by half. Continue to convert today. By the way, there's one more thing. Huami went to investigate the status of those 100 bees. As expected, after a night of brewing, the experimental bee that received the mutation inducer was ready to break out of its cocoon. After a brief scan, I found that only a dozen bees died this time, which is much lower than last time and a good omen. It's exciting time to open the blind box again. Huami rubbed her hands excitedly and didn't do anything else, so she squatted in front of the beehive to wait. Finally, under his alone gaze, the first cocoon broke open, and the bees inside first poked out a small head and then crawled out completely. Very energetic. But where are your tentacles? My head is bald and my tentacles are gone. The antennae of bees are mainly used to smell, and when they are gone, how can they find the source of honey? It's like a soldier going to the battlefield without a gun and playing with yarn. Failed. But it's okay, this is the first one, there are still many opportunities in the future. After the failed evolution of the bee was humanely destroyed, Huami continued to wait eagerly. Immediately after, the second bee broke out of its cocoon. Oh, this one seems very powerful. The yellow part of the bee's body surface has changed to a light red color, with no missing organs, and it can feel the vigorous vitality inside the bee. Huami controlled it to fly into mid-air and was about to carefully observe its characteristics. Suddenly, the red color on the surface of the bee's body became increasingly bright, emitting a faint light. At the same time, Huami sensed a surge of energy within her body waiting to be unleashed. Not good. With this thought in mind, Huami instinctively took a step back. Puff. The flames suddenly appeared, and the bee instantly turned into a small ball of fire, causing Huami's face to heat up at close range. Self-destructing bees. This vitality is too strong. Undoubtedly, it is also a failed evolution. This time, there's no need for others to destroy it. Watching the bee remains burn to ashes on the floor, Huami felt mixed emotions. Red and bustling, good omen. And this is only the second one, there are still many more ahead. Huami adjusted her mindset and prayed for the next bees. The third one, failed. The fourth one is unbearable. Nearly half of the bees still died in the cocoon breaking stage this time, which goes without saying. And the rest, none of them successfully mutated into favorable traits. Accompanied by the first ray of sunlight shining into the forest in the morning, the last mutated bee emerged from its cocoon. When Huami saw that its wings were so damaged that she couldn't even fly, she knew that her face was as black as coal this time, and she had smashed it all, losing her underwear. There is no guarantee for 100 people. It's really his mother black. If it were a game, the planning would be cursed to death by the players. But he doesn't plan to give up on it, the experiment has to continue. If a person has no dreams, what is the difference between them and salted fish, let alone his rare opportunity? If he doesn't make good use of it, it's even worse than salted fish. The laws of history indicate that primitive accumulation has always been bloody and cruel. The most important thing in cultivating new bee species is the initial accumulation stage, and there is no other way but to rely on the lives of the little bees to accumulate. Fortunately, there are enough samples. When there are more mutated bee species, we can try more scientific and efficient hybrid mutations. Moreover, perhaps new evolutionary methods can be discovered in the future. After all, this is a magical world, and anything is possible. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Uninvited Guests. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Uninvited Guests. Huami continues to transform forest wasps. This time, 13 bee colonies were transformed in one breath, and there are still 7 bee colonies that have not been transformed. I have become much more proficient than the first time. My spiritual strength seems to have increased, and it seems that this can also be improved. He had a faint feeling that although he could only control a group of bees at once, he was about to touch the threshold for controlling 2 groups of bees after completing the transformation. Huami took a few bites of honey, rested for a while, and selected 500 bees as experimental subjects. After drinking the mutation inducer, they each returned to the hive and entered a cocooning state. The success rate is low, but fortunately, the mutation process is fast, and the results can be obtained quickly, so the time cost is not high. After finishing these, Huami returned to the house to continue cleaning up. Yesterday I just did a preliminary cleaning, it just looked more comfortable. Today we need to be more meticulous and restore this small wooden house to a habitable state. Usually, he still needs to stay at home, but if there is any unexpected situation that requires him to stay here, he can also stay overnight. Huami has a lot of experience in cleaning. The ancestral home and the flower fields behind it occupy a considerable area, and he lives alone. Despite poor business, he doesn't hire any assistants and does all the work himself. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Cleaning is not difficult, as long as you have hands, but there are opinions on how to do it most efficiently and save time. Huami followed the steps she had summarized and thoroughly cleaned the entire wooden house from corner to corner, giving it a completely new look. I also cleaned up the weeds in the backyard. As for the underground alchemy room, I won't go clean it for now, as I won't need it for a while. Finally, I spread the bedding I brought over onto the wooden bed, feeling like the finishing touch. The whole cabin suddenly gained popularity. Indeed, no matter where you are, the bed is the harbor of the soul. What is a sense of security? Next is the question of exploring outside. When bees collect honey, they are mostly fully automatic and spend most of their time idle on the side. When the equipment purchased online arrives, he plans to take a stroll in the forest, familiarize himself with the environment, and search for new sources of honey and flowers. He wants to turn this place into his own beekeeping base. But there is one question that must be considered. If you want to build a beekeeping farm, you have to expand and first deal with the surrounding trees. Although these trees are far apart from each other, they have not yet achieved the effect of a rainforest blocking the sky and sun. But if left untreated, it will definitely affect the growth of flowers. The reason why the moonlight flower is not affected is that it can absorb moonlight essence at night and is self-sufficient, which is equivalent to opening a small kitchen for itself. But flowers without this characteristic are more uncomfortable. These trees are generally more than twice as tall as trees on Earth, and cleaning them up is not as simple as words. He can only carve out a wormhole for one person to pass through, and some large machinery must not be able to be brought over. Moreover, we also need to consider whether too much noise will attract any dangerous beasts to come over. In this magical world, any one warcraft would be enough to kill him. According to Huami's alchemy notes, there are many dangerous magical creatures in the Black Forest, and there are only dozens of them recorded in the book. The actual situation is definitely more. As the saying goes, if we can cultivate combat bees with magical abilities, we can feel more at ease. Huami looked at the moon sleeping flower sea in front of her and suddenly wanted to conduct an experiment to see if the flowers here could survive on Earth. So he carefully dug out a lullaby flower, opened a wormhole, and planned to take it back to his ancestral home to plant in the flower field. The result left him confused. The person passed through, but there was nothing in their hand. The moon sleeping flower that they had just held disappeared out of thin air. Huami then went back and found the sleeping flower lying quietly on the floor. He picked it up and tried again, but still couldn't take it with him. Strange, I've tried it before, and both living and dead creatures can. After a moment of thought, Huami suddenly realized that he had only taken bees from the beginning and had not tried any other living creatures. It was not accurate to conclude that he could take living creatures through time. Maybe we can only bring bees. After all, he was endowed with this ability by a blue bee, which may have some mysterious limitation. Huami tried several other organisms, including animals and plants, and the results proved that no matter which side they came from, they could only take bees, a living creature, to cross two realms. Anyway, let's get back to the main topic. I need to contact you and buy 10 more bee colonies. 2 of them are specifically used for mutation experiments, and the other 8 are spare. The price of buying a bee colony is actually not expensive. The number of bee colonies a beekeeper has mainly depends on the sales of honey. If the honey is not sold well, it is meaningless to keep too many bees. By the way, one of the experimental bee colonies, should we try Italian bees? The success rate of mutations may vary among different species of ordinary bees. Both types of bees have their own advantages and disadvantages, with Italian bees having a stronger ability to gather nectar. Generally, Italian bees are used for mobile beekeeping. Chinese bees have strong survival ability in the wild and high resistance to harsh environments, so they are usually used for designated beekeeping. But after some thought, Huami decided not to buy Italian bees for the time being and instead to buy Chinese bees. On the one hand, there is a different species in the bee colony, which can easily cause infighting and even affect reproduction. Even if he has the ability to control the bee colony, he cannot control them at all times. So don't do anything else. On the other hand, it is also the main reason that although Italian bees and Chinese bees belong to the same family of bees, they have reproductive isolation from each other. It is reasonable to infer that there may also be reproductive isolation between variant bee species based on Chinese honeybees and variant bee species based on Italian honeybees. In this way, the plan for subsequent hybrid evolution is no longer feasible. So in the early stages, it is best to use a type of bee for mutation experiments. On that day, Huami contacted the merchant and placed an order for 10 bee colonies, all of whom were old acquaintances. Both parties had good reputations and could save a lot of trouble, at least not worrying about quality issues. Next, we'll wait for the bee colony to deliver to our door. A day passes in an instant. Coincidentally, the duration of a day in a foreign world is similar to that on Earth. At this time, it is spring on Earth, with long days and short nights. There is no distinction between the 4 seasons in the foreign world. According to the records in the alchemy notes, the year in the other world can be divided into wind moon, fire moon, water moon, ice age, and chaos period. Except for the ice age and chaotic period, the other 3 periods are divided into 4 stages: rise, movement, prosperity, and rest. For example, now it is the month of abundant water, with short days and long nights. In order to prevent disrupted sleep patterns, he decided to schedule his schedule as much as possible according to Earth time. But he stayed up for a while today, waiting for the results of the over 500 experimental bees before leaving. The result made him depressed. More than 500, not a single one has successfully evolved. It's a big loss. He knew that the probability of mutation producing favorable traits was very low, but he didn't expect it to be so low. Very good, you have a good chance of playing like this, right? Hua Mi decided to pause the experiment for now. No matter how rich her family is, she will have to pay for it. It's better to wait until those 10 bee colonies arrive. The next day, the equipment purchased online arrived. Hua Mi has all moved into a small wooden house. After converting the remaining 7 bee colonies, he was adjusting the composite bow according to the instructions when he suddenly heard a strange movement coming from outside the yard. He immediately released his consciousness to perceive the bee colony and found that the worker bees had stopped collecting honey and were taking on attacking positions. Like facing a great enemy. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. 7 Pikashi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 7 Pikashi. Hua Mi couldn't see what the incoming person was through the bee colony, but she could feel the stress state of the colony, indicating that she was facing a threat. I can't leave the beehive unattended. Besides, if there's really any danger, I can immediately open a wormhole and escape back to Earth. With this in mind, Hua Mi calmed down and pulled out an arrow, which was half pulled open on the bowstring. She walked to the door and slowly pushed open a gap with her toes, looking out. I saw 30 groups of worker bees taking off on the pristine sea of moon sleeping flowers, surrounded by a vast expanse of darkness and uninvited guests. Although the individual head of a wasp is small, the sum of 30 groups is not a small number. Overlapping and stacking together is like a giant, not only blocking the sky and sun, but also enough to block the line of sight. Only a few small figures can be vaguely seen through the gaps, faintly visible within the bee swarm. I didn't feel any strong danger. Hua Mi controlled the bee colony to make way for a gap, fixed her gaze, and hesitated for a moment. Pikashi. The moment she saw those little guys, Hua Mi couldn't help but think of this term in her mind. It's like carefully crafted dolls, with pointed ears and a body size about the size of his palm. They have a slender and petite figure, dressed in natural elements such as leaves and petals. Behind them, there are butterfly wings that look like thin gauze, shining brightly in the sunlight. The appearance does indeed conform to the traditional impression of elves by earthlings. Hua Mi saw that they didn't seem to have any malicious intent, and most importantly, they didn't seem to pose any threat. She let out her consciousness and ordered the bee colony to stop besieging and divide into 2 sides, like a well-trained army, ready to stand guard. 7 Pikeshire saw the bee colony suddenly forming a neat line. First, it was strange, and then they saw Hua Mi walking over with a composite bow, instantly regaining their vigilance. It is obvious that this humanoid creature is the mastermind behind the scenes. These ferocious little flying insects are just his claws and teeth. The leader was a red-haired man, who protected her little sisters behind her. He held a cane in his hand, which was not much thicker than a toothpick, in front of him. He faced Hua Mi and tried to make a fierce expression. But when you are weak, threats are like being cute. Hua Mi ignored it and observed it calmly. Seeing them all carrying a small wooden bucket the size of a thumb on their arms, it seemed like they were collecting something. Are you also here to collect nectar? At present, there should be no bees in this world, but nectar, a delicious and energy-rich product, will definitely attract other organisms, otherwise it means there is an ecological niche gap. These little guys may just make a living by gathering honey. As a result, they didn't pick the nectar this time and were instead surrounded by invasive species, which is also considered unlucky for them. These 7 Pickias are really difficult to distinguish solely based on their appearance. However, their hair colors are all different, roughly consisting of 7 basic colors in nature: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. The one with blue hair, whose small face has swollen into a pig's head, is the unlucky one that has been stung several times. At this moment, I was surrounded by my friends in the middle, holding onto my pig's head face with grievances and tears streaming down my face. They are the indigenous people of the Black Forest, and obviously have intelligence to communicate. Unnecessary, Huami does not want to conflict with them. It is best to establish a good relationship, which will be very helpful for exploring the Black Forest and searching for nectar and flowers in the future. Hello everyone. Huami used the language of this world to express goodwill and smiled, saying, "Is there anything I can help with?" Pixie, with red hair, was taken aback at the words, but immediately regained his serious expression. "Don't try to play tricks, alchemist. We will never be fooled by you." The voice is gentle and pleasant, full of spirituality. But why does she call me an alchemist? Do you treat me as the original owner of this small wooden house? So it seems that this group of Pikeshire may know some information about the owner of the wooden house. But obviously, the gaze is not very good, which can be mistaken. If you can mix it up a bit, maybe you can learn something from them. Huami said in an unfamiliar language, "This is a misunderstanding. You broke into my flower field, and my bee colony regarded you as enemies. Of course, they will defend themselves and counterattack. We're just trying to get nectar." Red-haired Pishi angrily waved his wand, leaving a sparkling mark on the top. "During your disappearance, we've been taking care of this flower field. You're the intruder. That's to say, although they grow outside your house, they are actually raised by us." Orange-haired Pikashi hid behind his red hair, weakly supporting him. "I see, besides the fact that the moonflower itself is easy to feed, it also has the care of these Pichi, which is why it has grown into such a large sea of flowers. Speaking of which, it is indeed his fault." After pondering for a moment, Huami asked, "What are you collecting nectar for?" "Of course it's for eating." Huang Hepikeksi answered naturally. As he spoke, he reached out his small hand towards the several sleeping flowers beside him, elegantly waving it. Accompanied by a twinkling effect of starlight, several streams of nectar fluid flew out of the sleeping flowers, merging into a ball and hovering in the air. Just like this. Before he could finish speaking, the purple-haired Pikashi suddenly stretched his head and awkwardly swallowed the ball of nectar, with a happy expression on his face. Huang Mao, on the other hand, placed his hands on his hips, looking at his little companion with a helpless and angry expression. "Now you have taken over our nectar and let these ferocious insects attack us." Red-haired Pixie seemed to have a fiery temper and clenched his fist in anger. They only launch attacks when they feel threatened, and they also pay the price of their lives. Don't believe it, you see. Huami pointed below. How could it be like this? Blue-haired Pikashi, who had been stung into a pig's head, saw the corpses of those worker bees. Originally, his eyes were only hazy with tears, but now he broke through the defense and began to drop small pearls. The other 6 little ones also showed a sad expression. Kind in nature, able to cooperate. Huami made up her mind and cleared her throat, saying, "This was just a misunderstanding. It was a tragedy caused by our lack of understanding of each other, not your fault." Upon hearing him say so, the sadness of the 7 Pickies only slightly subsided. Huami changed her tone and said, "However, your behavior of consuming nectar is truly a waste. To be frank, you do not understand the true value of nectar." "What? This statement cannot be taken as not being heard. It's like saying that the people of the foodie empire don't know how to cook, which one can't bear it. Purple-haired Pikashi flew up to the front and protested, "We are experts in tasting nectar. We have a clear understanding of the best nectar to eat in every season." Yes, you said we don't understand nectar, do you? You should talk about it. Faced with this group of aggressive little cuteness, Huami did not directly refute, but smiled and introduced them. These little ones are called bees. They can collect nectar and process it into honey, which is sweeter, more delicious, and more nutritious than nectar. If you don't believe it, when this batch of honey is brewed, I can invite you to taste it. Don't joke, these ferocious insects are clearly just eating. Are you trying to find an excuse to occupy this flower field, cunning alchemist? Exclaimed red-headed Pixie with displeasure. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Suoha. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Suoha. Huami remained calm and said, "This batch of moonlight flower honey will probably be ready in less than 10 days. Have I deceived you? You will know with just a taste. Speaking of which, you will be the first pikesher in the world to taste honey, and you should feel honored." Pikashi. A saying from our hometown can be understood as little elf. Red-haired Pixie exploded at the sound and said, "What a rudeness. We are noble spirits of the Black Forest, don't use strange names to call us." "Okay, Xiaohong. You." Red Hair clenched his fist in anger, his ears almost smoking. But they can only be powerless and furious. These massive bee colonies on both sides are eyeing fiercely. They have already experienced their skills and dare not act recklessly anymore. "Sisters, let's go." Red Hair glared fiercely at Huami, then turned around and flew away. The rest of Pishi followed suit. "Let's go somewhere else to gather honey. Truly worthy of being an alchemist, truly shameless. Only scumbags and scumbags will learn alchemy." Listening to their tone, does the reputation of an alchemist seem to be not very good? However, it doesn't matter. Anyway, he just wants to focus on farming and beekeeping, and won't rashly come into contact with this world too much. Even if one goes out to explore, it will only be aimed at finding new sources of honey and flowers, and will not actively cause any trouble. The pickies flew away cursing and cursing. The purple-haired one followed at the back, flew a distance, stopped, looked back, flew another distance, stopped and looked again, and finally hesitated before flying back to Huami. "What you said? Honey, is it really sweet?" Huami solemnly guarantees, super sweet, and the taste is much better than nectar, even forming sweet crystals. "I guarantee that you will fall in love with it after taking a bite." Xiao Zimao suddenly showed a longing expression, and a crystal-clear saliva flowed from the corner of her mouth. The pixies are very wary of him and it's not easy to win him over. But this little guy should be a breakthrough. Huami coaxed and said, "After the honey is brewed, I will put up a sign in the flower field. You can come and taste it when you see it. By the way, could you please help me try out any special effects of magic honey?" Huami silently added in her heart. Xiao Zimao regained consciousness from her beautiful daydream and nodded repeatedly, I can. Hey. Before she could finish speaking, she was grabbed by the red hair flying back to find her. "Let's go. Lightly, gently, your ears are about to fall off." Huami waved at them and said, "Remember to come and taste the honey then." From afar came Pichi's spiritual voice. "Pooh, despicable alchemist. Are you an alchemist?" Huami returned to the wooden house and looked at the black robe draped over the bedside, lost in thought. This is left by the original owner of the wooden house, and the material is unknown. It is very smooth and sturdy, and there is no sign of damage or mold after so long, only some dust has fallen. Huami took it home and washed it with a washing machine. After putting it on, it was as smooth as silk and the size was just right, without affecting her movements at all. And it seems to have added temperature control magic, which feels very cool. In the future, just put on this black robe here and you can better integrate into this world. Hua Mi walked around in her robe and found that the outfit really suited her. The whole person has a feeling of radiant radiance. The alchemist in the Black Forest sounds pretty good. The next morning, the 10 previously purchased bee colonies were delivered to our doorstep. Each colony had over 8,000 bees, each accompanied by a queen bee and a hive. I have cooperated with the other party many times, and the seller is Grandpa's old friend. The quality of the bee colony is definitely guaranteed. Hua Mi conducted a routine inspection and did not find any problems. He unleashed his consciousness and attempted to communicate with the new group of little guys. Because his current mental strength can only control a group of bees at once, it took him a long time to communicate in groups. The entire process lasted about half an hour and successfully established a connection with them. This also means that these 10 boxes of bees will be officially included under our command. Hua Mi moved all 10 beehives to a different world and began their mission. 8 bee colonies were allowed to freely gather honey. Their main function is actually to serve as reserve troops, and once new bee species mutate, they inject templates into these reserve troops to create bee colonies of new bee species in a short period of time. The remaining 2 experimental bee colonies cannot be idle either. The mutation experiment cannot be stopped. The more new bee species, the better. How many bees will be invested in this experiment? Of course it is, all of it. 2 bee colonies, over 16,000 bees. Put it all in. I don't believe it anymore. Out of these 16,000 bees, there can't be a successful evolutionary individual. He poured a portion of the mutation inducer into the pot and manipulated the bee colony to suck it up. Bees are orderly lying on the edge of the pot to absorb mutation attractants. After drinking one wave, it immediately flew away, while another wave continued. Because it is group manipulation, the process is quite fast. But by the time all these 16,000 bees have been sucked up, most of the mutation attractants will be gone. What should we do if we run out of it? I don't know the formula. Even if we have a semi-automatic alchemy kettle, it won't work. I hope we can accumulate enough mutated bee species before using it, so we can conduct hybridization experiments. This large group of experimental bees have returned to their nests to form cocoons. And Hua Mi also put on the black robe of an alchemist, brought the equipment she had purchased, and planned to embark on her first exploration trip. Exploration is not aimless wandering, he already found the target yesterday. Goal. Feather blossom. Rating. Rare. Flowering period. From the month of water prosperity to the month of water rest. Suitable growth environment. Moist soil, commonly found near lakes. This is a flower he selected from his alchemy notes. It blooms in the month of water saturation, blooms in the month of water rest, and withers during the Ice Age. The reason for choosing this goal is because the note states that although feather flowers are a rare plant, fortunately they are relatively common in the Black Forest. Moreover, based on the content of the notes, Hua Mi concluded that it is highly likely to be a honey source flower. Don't ask, asking is about experience and the beekeeper's intuition. In addition to equipment such as a composite bow and emergency supplies, Hua Mi also plans to bring a group of worker bees. Even ordinary bees can form a certain level of attack power with proper control. Not to mention the forest wasp with double speed. As long as you are flesh and blood, then you are afraid of stung. This can be seen from yesterday's standoff with those 7 Pikashi. Heat up your hands first. Hua Mi drew her bow and shot an arrow, aiming at a tree 10 meters away. With a swoosh, the arrow successfully pierced through the middle of the 2 trees. Not bad. Let's go. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Initial Exploration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Initial exploration. Feather flowers are commonly found in moist soil near lakes, so his plan is to search for lakes in the forest. The equipment he bought includes a compass, but it's not very useful in this world. Specifically, it manifests as the pointer suddenly changing direction after walking a certain distance, as if influenced by some mysterious force. Hua Mi has a decent sense of direction, but no one dares to say that they will never get lost in a complex ecological environment like the forest. So he walked very slowly, trying to remember the features along the way, and used a dagger to mark a mark on the tree every distance he walked, so as not to deviate on the return journey. The trees here are more than twice as thick as those on Earth, but in recent days, Hua Mi has also become commonplace and doesn't find it unusual. The forest is rich in species, and on his way forward, he occasionally sees some strange creatures. Four-legged rodents, bipedal birds, and fleshy purple insects. These obviously belong to lower-level organisms, without communicable intelligence, and most of them have little aggression. They intentionally avoid them or observe them in the dark. Hua Mi also tried her best not to provoke them and let the bee swarms surround her as protection. He only has one goal in his mind, which is the feather flower. As a beekeeper, Hua Mi is only familiar with bees, but knows very little about other creatures. Even in the forests of Earth, there are probably many magical creatures that he does not know, so far there is no real experience of exploring other worlds. This is normal. I'm not the protagonist of a novel who has luck. How could I have adventures every time I explore? Going out to pick up treasures is pure nonsense, and walking a few steps and encountering monsters is even more absurd. Plain is the main tone of reality. What is that? As Hua Mi walked, she looked up and saw a small backpack hanging from a tree in front of her. At first, he thought it was hanging on a branch, but suddenly the backpack swayed. Upon closer inspection, a green-haired monkey crouched on the branch, holding the backpack in its hand. I guess it was snatched. The monkey also noticed Hua Mi and threw a fist-sized nut over casually. With an arm span of nearly 2 meters, the throwing speed is astonishing. Fortunately, Hua Mi reacted quickly and dodged sideways. Otherwise, being hit in the head and dying in person would result in a severe concussion. Seeing his attack fail, the green-haired monkey screamed angrily and jumped down from a tree branch over 10 meters high, landing on all fours and bared its fangs at Hua Mi, ready to pounce. In Hua Mi's mind, there was a loud alarm, and she didn't have time to think much. She immediately manipulated the forest rapid bee, and a swarm of bees rushed towards its front door. Mainly because its body is covered with green hair, and the bees' pincers are afraid they won't penetrate, so they only attack the face without hair cover. The green-haired monkey also saw this battle for the first time. He put away his fangs and instinctively shrank back, but soon regained his ferocity. He swung his backpack and swung it fiercely towards the bee swarm. The bee colony is divided into two, relying on its speed advantage to perfectly avoid attacks at the cost of a few bees. Then split into two and launch a pincer-shaped attack, directly targeting its face. The speed is too fast, the monkey can't react in time. Ow! It made the same howl as Teacher Tom, and its two big hands slapped its face, trying to dispel the small insects in front of it. However, the bee colony is divided, and combined. It can advance, attack, retreat, and defend. It has strength but cannot exert it, as if it has punched cotton. It has no way to deal with this group attack, only being stung. A few seconds later, the green-haired monkey pounced with its head hugging the mouse. Hua Mi let the bee swarm chase after it until it was pushed out of sight. Only a dozen bees were lost. This battle damage is acceptable. He didn't even have any intention of personally taking action just now, and he didn't even lift the composite bow in his hand. Because the archer never easily pulls the bow, pulling the bow will bring blood. That monkey runs fast. Hua Mi asked the bee colony to reorganize and, as the winner, went to collect the spoils. The one-shoulder backpack left by the monkey. I looked at the fabric and it was very new. It should have just been snatched, and the owner is likely still in the forest. However, Huami did not intend to return the item to its original owner. Leaving aside the fact that it could not be found in this vast black forest, even if he knew where the owner was, he had no intention of sending it away. Mainly because he doesn't have the spare time. If there is anything good inside, he will feel his conscience and act recklessly. This is the simplest and most rough way to deal with it. Returning gold is only limited to the earth, and currently in a different world, the standards of conduct should be flexible and adaptable. Huami opened her backpack and rummaged through it. There aren't really many things inside. First, 2 small bottles were flipped out, each containing blue and red liquids. The bottles were labeled with their respective uses in printed font. Primary healing potion. Slowly restores a certain amount of vitality and mana. Isn't this just about adding health and magic? Huami pulled out the cork of one of the bottles and leaned towards her nose to smell it. A strong aroma of Chinese herbal medicine rushed straight to the sky, almost turning him over. Cough, those who can drink this thing are undoubtedly brave warriors. But when it comes to emergency situations, there's no need to worry about whether it tastes good or not. After all, it's for life preservation, and the taste is almost reasonable. Huami immediately stuffed the stopper back in and casually packed 2 bottles of medicine into her backpack. Continue flipping. Oh ho, gold coins. Huami dug out a small cloth bag containing 5 sparkling coins. 4 of them are of the same style, with a tree printed on one side and a sword cross pattern on the other. After biting, the texture was soft, and it was probably gold. There is another one that is relatively large, with only one side printed with a pattern resembling a dragon head. The texture is very hard, and it almost broke his teeth. This is definitely not gold. Fake currency. But when facing the sunlight, one can see its surface is very shiny, with a mysterious purple aura faintly emanating from the golden light, which always feels more precious than those 4 real gold coins. Anyway, put it away first. Huami also transferred this small money bag to her backpack. Next, I dug up some small pieces of food, such as cookies and candies, which are ordinary foods without special effects. Most of them are desserts, perhaps to replenish energy as soon as possible during the adventure. Finally, it is a booklet. Black Forest Adventure Guide, 2nd edition, author Baron of the Wind. Boy, there's also a special adventure booklet. It seems that this place is quite famous. Turning to the first page, there is a special reminder from the author that although it was printed, the handwriting is handwritten. The first rule of survival in the Black Forest. Be careful of the green ape. These annoying guys will steal or even snatch your luggage in front of you when you're not paying attention. The green ape. Should be the guy from earlier. This really has a bit of black humor. It seems that the owner didn't take the reminders in the adventure guide to heart. Huami flipped to the first page of the main text. Firstly, there is an opening statement. Although Black Witch's Forest is only a 2-star adventure site, there are some precautions you must know. If you underestimate it, the forest will punish you. This will be helpful for me to explore the forest. But now is not the time to read, go back and read slowly. Huami stuffed the booklet into her backpack and continued moving forward. But not too far away, another unexpected problem was exposed. End of this chapter.